Those of you from the early days of the Internet, what online mysteries do you remember that remain unsolved? Back in the days of war dialing, there were so many weird phone numbers that were discovered that led to weird recordings or just did weird shit. I'd love to hear about what some of those were about. We found one once where it was just some old English-sounding gentleman who answered. You could ask for anyone, even something obviously troll, like is GARLAXX the Eater of Worlds there? And the man would just reply, oh no, I'm sorry, they are out right now, then hang up on you. We didn't annoy or harass it, but we did call a few times to check if it was still there, and it always was. We always assumed it was some intelligence asset, and if you could say the right thing to it you would activate it. Who killed Lord British? I don't think the person who did it ever revealed who they were. When The Simpsons did the Who Shot Mr. Burns cliffhanger, they had a contest to see if anyone could solve it. The showrunners tried all that they could to find the person but never did. I had a previous Reddit account made during the Dig Exodus. This was at least a decade ago when Reddit was pretty new. I came across a post from a guy who swore that a particular website that looked like a generic local news site with the usual app and Reuters news feeds was actually a government-run intelligence program. It functioned like a numbers station in plain sight, meaning that the exact wording used would match up with a one-time use pad and provide intelligence info. I cannot remember the exact website, but it looked unimpressive, and the domain was registered in Bahrain, despite appearing to cater to a mid-size US city. He then said he was being harassed in real time since he made that post. Then he said he got doxxed and strangers were calling him telling him to cut it out. I tried to reply to his post a few minutes later, but then found that his Reddit account and every post he made were deleted. What was that all about? Some similar government conspiracy-sounding stuff happened to me years ago. I started a VPN business circa 2009, right around the time of the Arab uprising and before the VPN business market was as popular as it is now. Most providers were deploying PPTP and OpenVPN, but I deployed SSTP, which works over port 443, uses regular HTTPS, and worked with the built-in Windows VPN client. Needless to say, in the span of about 3 months I had massive signups from China, the Middle East, and Northern African countries. I never made an effort to hide my identity and ran the business out of my house. One day the proverbial men in black showed up, black suits, sunglasses, black Suburbans, and so on, only, they had the olive-colored skin of someone who was of Middle Eastern or Northern African descent. They asked for me by name, asked if I ran XYZ VPN service, identified themselves as diplomatic representatives from an embassy in DC, and politely asked me if they could come in and ask me some questions. I was young then, so I said sure. Come on in. Well, the meeting didn't last very long. They started asking me if I understood what was happening with the Arab Spring. They referenced Egypt specifically, and if I would block users from certain countries being able to connect to my service if they requested. When I said no, not without a court order, they became agitated and then asked who else was involved in helping me with the business. They then started naming my mom, my sisters, my daughter who didn't live with me, and several of my close friends. It was the scariest moment of my life, and I was sitting there alternating between panic and disbelief. I told them none of those people were involved, and they said okay, well, why don't you think about what the best thing for you to do is? We will be back in touch. I spoke to some friends in the security world and all of them said to just shut down, even if they didn't do something criminal. They'd probably just sue me into bankruptcy. So after starting a VPN biz and in 3 months having hundreds of customers, I refunded all my customers for any unused services, and shut my doors, literally overnight. I never heard from nor got a visit from the Middle Eastern men in black again. I never figured out what Zombicom was all about. I remember this random YouTube video where a guy kidnaps a girl and after 10 years, he posted a video titled Happy Anniversary and laughed like hell with some mystery puzzle at the end. That's the disappearance of Maura Murray, and the video was posted on the 8th year. Supposedly the video creator is not involved, just mentally ill and may enjoy the attention. Cracked had an article about this, I know, but there was an old forum a girl had about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I think, where she had over 40k posts, all by herself. As in, she would make topics and reply to them as the series progressed. Or she watched seasons and episodes. IIRC 4chan caught wind and started raiding, so she deleted the site altogether. I really wish I had more context, because it seems so interesting. Not necessarily exclusively an internet thing, but the website for the Heaven's Gate cult is still up and maintained. These are the folks that committed group suicide because they believed that if they died when the Hale-Bopp comet was passing, they would ride it through a magical gate to paradise. If you email them, someone who was left behind will answer. The Enigma conspiracy theory about Pink Floyd's album The Division Bell died with Usenet's popularity before it ever led to either the treasure the band had allegedly hidden somewhere for fans to find or the identity of the person connected with the band who was contributing to the theories. The identity of Blood Ninja, the greatest internet troll of all time. Those were the days. When the hell is John Titor planning to show back up? Back in the day there was a site called Bonsai Kitten claiming to sell real kittens grown in glass jars. It was a hoax website, but people actually believed it. Whether My Immortal, famously the worst fanfiction of all time, was written by a troll or not. The identity and motives of Otaking, a troll who made the dialogue on the Rec Arts anime Usenet board grind to a slow, depressing halt around 1996 or so. They flooded the board all caps comments and posts, rendering the normal activity of the board slow and useless. They disappeared after a few months, but serious damage had been done. The Mayday mystery. There were a load of conspiracy theories like a cult, government recruiting, the Illuminati, and etc. Basically, this guy found this weird cryptic ad in his school paper, and turns out that they date back to the early 80s, possibly even further, and still continue to this day. The ads included the word Mayday, and a lot of ciphers and math. Apparently, the guy who discovered this was messaged by the mysterious group who made it, although I'm a little skeptical about that. What happened to this girl on MIRC? It started in about 1999. I think she was sick. We chatted a lot, got in trouble for long-distance calls interstate. Tried to meet her at a festival when I traveled to her city in 0001 with my sister, and I actually saw her in a pink cowboy hat. Then I chickened out. We chatted for a bit longer and poof. Gone. No clue. Sorry Nita from Sydney. I actually can't remember her handle now. I'm trying to think of it. Back before the internet, before AOL was a big thing, me and some buds made a relay message setup that used some abandoned telegraph lines in my town. We were too cheap to pay for the phone time and C64s. And we made these cards that would send out electrical pulses that would be deciphered on the other end. It was painfully slow, like 2 bits a second, and could take an hour to get a large message across. Also, one person could send a message at a time, or the receiver would get mixed letters. Now that I think about it, it was basically a telegraph that was operated by computers. Our computers would identify themselves to each other, and we could see who sent the message looking at a 3-digit identification code that would be sent with a message automatically. One day I was sitting listening and waiting for my friend to send me something. I started getting a message that had no identifier, and it read something like, "If memory doesn't fail me, Echo Cadillac 275,610,473,018,493. It spat random numbers. The message played for about 5 minutes and wasn't too long, but I called my friend and he got it too. We never did figure out what that was. It was a closed system on abandoned telegraph lines that had been cut. We ended up blaming it on a computer error in BASIC or something, but it never happened again. Or maybe some kid from school found out and wanted to mess with us. Who knows? Fun times. Echo Cadillac 275,610,473,018,493. Somewhere in a remote location, an abandoned computer terminal just read this and tried to initiate a missile launch at Canada. How the have we still never seen a picture of CJC, the founder of GameFAQs? I was on StumbleUpon, and I remember a story about a Russian boy who had knowledge of ancient civilizations even though he was from a small town in Siberia. He claimed to be an alien who was sent down to Earth and grew in his host the mom. Can't remember why he was sent to Earth, but I haven't been able to find that story since. Nobody to this day knows how strong Bad types with boxing gloves on his hands. Where did all those resumes go? I emailed hundreds of resumes during the early days of the internet, and as far as I know they just disappeared into some black hole of a server. There was a site I found only once and have never been able to relocate. The whole of it seemed to consist of cryptic text in various patterns, with links to other cryptic text in various patterns. The links would be on whole words or sometimes individual letters. It's hard to explain how, but going through the pages gave you the sense that you were going somewhere, that it wasn't just endless randomness but some kind of puzzle to be solved. I never solved it and neglected to bookmark it. Now that 486 computer is a scrap heap. The leprechaun sighting in Crichton. I want to know if an entire neighborhood came together to fake it. If something was in the water, a real leprechaun was seen. But most importantly, I want to know where the gold at. I've always wondered about Ted the Caver. I think his original posts was on Geocities, but he had this whole blog about going caving in some more unknown areas and hearing, smelling weird noises and deathly flesh similar to a Wendigo. I think Ted the Caver could be called something like creepypasta before creepypasta was a thing. It's clearly fiction, but it's so well written and a shame it didn't become more well known. Who wrote SQL Slammer? An early internet worm. I work in cybersecurity. I remember at the time it was released it was crazy the damage it did. Took down 90% of all infectable hosts within 10 minutes or so. Many believe it was an early cyberweapon test. If you get into the technical details of the thing, it's wild. So crazy efficient its entire source code sat in a single packet. The identity of Tubgirl. Someone told me to never watch Tubgirl or Goatsea, so I never did. But as a guy who was on the internet during the days when a BBS could only handle 1 or 2 concurrent connections, I feel I've missed an important facet of the strange history of the web. What the hell is Tubgirl? And no, please don't post it. I trust the person who told me to stay away. Tubgirl is a naked woman lying in a tub, on her back, legs spread and pulled up. Shot from directly above, giving you an excellent view of the scene, and she reenacts a fountain with her diarrhea, which just so happens to arc back right onto her face. I can't remember the name of the channel, but I remember the mystery being set around early YouTube days. There was this one girl doing vlogs in YouTube and she had quite a following. Then she started uploading stuff about being stalked and she was afraid someone was after her. After some time, she completely vanished and stopped uploading. Lonely Girl 15. It was staged. I'll admit, it had me for a minute. There is still one mystery surrounding that, though. 2 videos were posted on YouTube by Cassie is Watching that used some of the same locations as LG 15. No one has ever claimed responsibility for them. Just after the first Harry Potter film was made, there was a creepy website with photos of Hermione's face very badly photoshopped onto various sexy celebs' bodies. There was no nudity, but it was still creepy, especially as he had a countdown clock until Hermione was legal. The mystery, I suppose, is whether the person who made the site was a for real weirdo or if it was some weird sort of parody, satire. I never saw the site again, so don't know how it progressed in later years. And you'd never find it now without getting yourself on some sort of list. There was also the Mary Kate and Ashley countdown page, which was just a static image of them and the countdown timer ticking away. Literally nothing else. Just a huge header, followed by the picture and clock.